Max Griffiths is a leader of infrastructure and platform engineering for ThoughtWorks Europe. The key constant in his 20-year work has been a focus where technology meets business, helping modernize and drive value through a combination of engineering, product leadership, and continuous delivery practices. The floor is yours, Max.
All right, thank you. Thanks, folks. Good to be here. So, start off with a little bit of a story. I work for ThoughtWorks. I think ThoughtWorks and Kroz have combined a lot of forces over the last few years here. So you've probably heard of ThoughtWorks, and I'll talk about them in a second. But one of the things that they do is, if you've worked there for 10 years, they give you 3 months sabbatical, like paid leave, to just go off. And I was thinking about this yesterday when we were talking about Playground, and I think there's something in that where they very much want you. Like if you saw Sam's keynote yesterday about directed and undirected, they very much want you to just go off and do whatever takes your fancy. So a lot of this that I'm going to go through, I was fortunate enough to do because I had that time off, which is, when you think about it, it's a crazy amount of time if you've been working through your career for 20 years and then you suddenly have this 3 months gifted to you. And you're like, what the hell am I going to do for these 3 months? And you realize how much of a slave to time, especially as a professional services consultant, how much of a slave to time you are. Like, what am I going to do every day? I've got to have a plan. I've got to do something productive. Fortunately, this story is one that is productive, and I'm really proud of it. So I'm really feel very happy to be able to share some of this with you. But 3 months is a lot of time, and so obviously what did I do? Like any typical kind of software engineer, I sort of had a Kanban board. Not an actual Kanban board, but still very much a Kanban board in my head. An agile board with a whole bunch of little things that I could do, bit of travel, bit of this, bit of DIY, just moved into a new house. But one of those things was like, I got into software engineering because I really like building things. As a kid, like Lego, Octopus, building Lego. I think it's very common with engineering. But building stuff with your hands in the real world is different to building kind of software via a keyboard and a 2D screen. I'm sure even if you're not a developer, you can kind of appreciate that. So yeah, what could I do to get back to physical stuff? And I'd been having these experiences in tree houses. You can go and do an Airbnb and stay in a tree. And I started to have this like very magical connection with the tree houses. And so when I said to people, I'm thinking about building a tree house, they said, oh yeah, for your niece, I've got a 5-year-old niece. For your niece, no, this is for adults. This is for adults to kind of get back to nature, because I think even if you didn't play in tree houses as a kid, I think there's some sort of kid inside you that comes out. Come in, folks. There's some sort of kid in you that comes out when you're in a tree house or when you go down a slide or something like that. So this talk is a little bit about platform engineering and about my reflections on actually what some of these, I guess, unconscious or subconscious tools I used inside me to go about this feat. But a little bit about me. I've been 20 years in this kind of DevOps and CI/CD space. I'm a technical consultant, working a lot now on digital platform strategy, and I've been in ThoughtWorks for the last 11 years. And ThoughtWorks really embodies. ThoughtWorks really embodies Agile, right? We had two people on the original, I think 12 signatories on the Agile Manifesto were ThoughtWorkers, so it's been in our blood, for 30 years, and that's important, right? Because of what I'm about to tell you. But just a quick, I feel like I want to give them a bit of airtime because I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for them, and so Agile is deep in our blood. Polyskilled people and multidisciplinary teams. And I like to think there's been a lot of talk about safe space, and I really like to think that ThoughtWorks really creates that, even when times are tough. But having said that, I've still learned a lot from this conference and things that I'm going to take back myself. We're also known because we write a lot of books, and these books are mostly written because of our experiences. We get a really good opportunity to work with a lot of different industries, a lot of different size companies, and then we like to try and give that back. And one of the things we have is a technology radar. If you're not familiar with it, highly recommend checking it out. It's a very opinionated piece on what's working, what's not working for people all around the world in different industries. But some of the guiding principles are about thinking big, delivering value, moving fast, and I think these things are really standing out, and I'll kind of come back to them in a bit. But just like talking a little bit about the history, and I think Sasha did a really good job yesterday about kind of talking through the DevOps and DevOps journey that he's going through at Deutsche Telekom. And it's still very much a thing, but I think DevOps has, and in the way, actually DevOps hasn't left the gap, but the industry has kind of left this gap around platform engineering. DevOps went through this phase. DevOps, I think the term came out about 2006. It then went through this like hype around 2010, 2012, and then it just became useless as a term because everybody cottoned onto it, and everybody, DevOps tooling, DevOps people, DevOps teams, and no one really knew what DevOps was, so you had to get to the next level of detail. And I think, platform engineering, I mentioned this yesterday, like platform engineering is probably going to suffer the same fate and the same doom, but right now, what I think, is that it's actually a lot of people are coalescing on it. So, DevOps being around cross-functional teams and sharing practices and culture, automation, measurement sharing. For those of you that just wanted like a really reduced version of DevOps, again, we can argue about this like it's 2012 in the pub later if you want. But I think this idea around platform engineering that's probably pretty difficult to read, but just to say that I've picked out a few definitions of platform engineering. There's one there from Gartner, there's one there from Red Hat, from Puppet, from platformengineering.org. These are all pretty reputable sources, and they're all talking about similar things, right? Again, like I don't know what's going on with this. Apologies. If you want my kind of very simple statement of what platform engineering is, it's around practice, it's around building composable pieces, capabilities or miniature platforms. And the idea, again, is that they're allowing their consumers to deliver with pace and reduce coordination and hopefully lower effort over time because you're building these core capabilities that can be brought together. But going back to the statements, when people ask me about it, I really cover off these four aspects around people, process, technology, business value. And it's so easy to just jump into technology, right? Because it's cool. There's so many tools that are coming out, and we all, most technologists, they're into tools. But when you look at how people are investing and how people are tackling some of these DevOps and platform engineering problems, it tends to start with tech. And I always think that's the last thing you should be looking at when you start looking at some of these people. It's much more of in fact, Sam used this word socio-technical yesterday, and I think that's very true of platform engineering. But it is hard, right? In large organizations especially, where information flow doesn't flow as much. Hubert from Bosch over here, we were talking about this in the Birds of the Feather this morning. This stuff is not easy, so I don't mean for any way to kind of signal this as easy. But the definitions there, we're all honing around platform engineering. That's great. So ThoughtWorks and myself, like we see platform engineering as a product sort of layer being added into DevOps, and these are all concerns of platform engineering. And it's not to say that you need to solve all of these immediately, but be aware that these are all important. So. Platform teams need to be grounded in self-service aspirations as well. Developer experience is sort of at the root of this. And not to kind of really blow people's minds, but I think some people are curious about, what does it look like for ThoughtWorks? And this is just an example. Again, this will probably change over time, but right now we're seeing this being a nice lens, if you like, when we talk to customers and to see how they're doing at various different areas. So it cuts across that developer experience. You've got some CI/CD stuff in the middle. You've got compliance and governance woven in, observability and how you're visualizing stuff that's going on in the system. Kubernetes always needs a mention at these things. Right, but there's product management that's running all the way through it, and I think that's the important piece. But where are all the trees in this presentation? So I know what you're saying. That isn't a tree house, Max. That's a couple of planks of wood in a few trees, but it's the beginning of the treehouse, right? So I'll take you through the iterations if you can bear with me for a second. But the foundation, right, of any decent treehouse is a platform, and so these first two beams. This was like day one, if you think about, and I was doing this on my own. But these two beams are really representing like this solid foundation, right? If you go back a few weeks to this, though, there was obviously a lot of thinking that went on and planning and. What do I care about, and like what are my values, and who am I doing this for? And again, like all of this is like ingrained kind of agile product thinking that's there. And so it only came to me reflecting and thinking about this talk that some of this stuff happened very quickly and instinctually, which is great because I've been doing it for a few years. But to go back and to try and document what were my values and what was I actually caring about. I've already decided I wasn't doing this for children, I was doing it for adults, so I'd obviously gone through some of this. So again, like learning, failing fast. So these trees are actually, my parents have some land. They live in the middle of Lincolnshire, which is a not very well-known county in England. And I wanted a safe place to fail, right? So I went to my parents' place. They've got a bunch of trees. My dad's, he's getting old in his age, and so he's kind of pretty happy to just have me around and do whatever. So he was willing to sacrifice these trees. Didn't trust me at all. These weren't my favorite trees. They've got some big trees, and I was like, yeah, those look like the trees I want to go for. But actually, QA mindset, like maybe I should fail fast, and if they die, no one's going to miss them too much. Having said that, I have failed fast as a 20-year-old. So going back 20 years, this was my tree house that I tried to build. And after one day, this is what I produced. If you can see that, I've kind of zoomed in over there. It's pretty much 2 planks of wood on a tree. So many lessons to learn as a 20-year-old. I'm a lot older than that now. But yeah, some other values, like thinking big, deliver value, moving fast. That's exactly what was important to me. But some other things, I wanted to be respectful to nature. I've started to have this appreciation for trees as these living things. Not sure whether that's me just getting old and sentimental, or I think you get a bit more of a connection to nature. Something to last. I didn't want this to just be throwaway. I was investing money and time into it. I didn't want it to just I didn't want to fail. I wanted to learn fast. And then building iteratively, because I was learning a lot of stuff. So I didn't want to have to hold all of this technical expertise in my head and like trying to build a house, because that's effectively what you're trying to do on a small scale. So just learning some things and then being able to come back to it later. So that was kind of important to me as well. But the first up is that I needed help, right? Because I didn't have a clue how to do this. Clearly, if you looked at my effort 20 years ago. So those of you that don't know, Pete Nelson, an American guy, lives in Washington State, and he's got various TV series on this. You can catch it on, I think it's on Now TV or Amazon Prime. It's called Treehouse Masters. So this was a little bit of research that I did, right? You get a book. It's probably not the kind of book recommendation you're expecting at a BizTech conference, but a good book nonetheless. Some great pictures, even if you're not building a treehouse, but it had practical information in it. So learned that, read it, got some ideas, but I think the point to pull out here is that I needed to get some expert support in there. I didn't want to just mess this up. We're talking about a foundation of a project. So that's one of the lessons to take away. There were other things like, did I need a structural engineer? What kind of wood did I want to get these beams out of? Some of the things I sort of just made some bets on. Again, that goes back to platform engineering as well. But this might not look respectful to nature, right? But trust me, because this is Pete Nelson's understanding, is that a tree, when you drill a hole in it and put something in it like this, it actually treats it like a fallen limb, and actually doesn't just weaken, but it can strengthen around it. And this is the amazing thing about trees, is that they kind of acknowledge this weird thing going on, and then it just starts to strengthen around it. So that isn't the tree bleeding, that's some WD-40 that you use to kind of get it in there. Honestly. But this was Pete's method, right? And this thing that you see here, that I'm pipe wrenching in there, is called a tree attachment bolt. And as you can tell by the name, that is a custom piece of hardware, right? And of course, because Pete's American, they don't do this in the UK. So I had this problem of how do I get this custom bolt? Not just that bolt, but like a lot of bolts, right? So this is a picture of some suitcases. It happened to have a trip to San Francisco, planned to see some friends. I used to live there. And so I managed to get some Treehouse hardware that was going out of stock a lot because of COVID and everyone's building things in their backyard. So I hauled this like 25 kilos of custom Treehouse hardware in my suitcase. It took up all my allowance, so I had very little clothes that trip. And yeah, I guess the theme here is that there's sometimes this expert tooling that you need to pull on, right? But it doesn't all need to be expert bespoke tooling. But there are some things, especially when you're talking about how to just get those initial things going, maybe you do need to, like, this stuff isn't cheap either, as you can imagine. So I looked for ways. I was like, surely I can make this. Surely I know someone who can make this stuff. These things as well, these little brackets, they call them dynamic uplift arresters. These things sit under the beam and allow the tree to move and sway without the whole platform kind of twisting and torquing. So we'll see that again in a second. This thing, on the other hand, this thing is a kind of a cable uplift thing. This is very custom, this thing down here. And they wanted $50 for one of these, right? And I needed 4 because I was attaching to 4 trees. And I was like, oh, I really like the idea of that. So just to kind of show you, like, this is kind of how it works. You've got the bolt that comes out. You've got your beam. You can see a cross-section of the beam. This is the tree on the side there, right? So it's kind of just adding a bit more support so that bolt doesn't sort of bend down over time under all the pressure. So, you know, I did a bit of physics back at school. I was like, this seems like a good decision, but, I really don't want to have to pay for that. Also, I forgot to pack it in San Francisco, so it was going to mean another round trip or someone sending it. So I was like, oh, like, you know, in the tech industry, you're like, there's always that custom feature in a tool where you think you need that, right? And they're going to bill you for it. And you think, maybe I could build it. Maybe I could build something 80% as good. So I went to see my friend Matt. This is Matt. He's an old school friend, actually. I've known him since I was about 10. And I'd kind of forgotten, he's a farmer, right? But he's got so many tools, and some of them antiques. So I went to Matt and I said, look, I want to kind of build this thing. Can you help me solve this problem, right? So I took the axles along. We drilled some holes. Oh yeah, I was like, kind of, is this SaaS? Am I using him as a service? He didn't charge me, so it's a pretty good SaaS product. Maybe it's just like looking around for like the skills that you have and things that you can put together when you're building that initial team. Maybe that's the message to take away from that. But hey, look, this is what I did. So I did that myself, like kind of spoke to a shipping rigging company and kind of put some pieces together. So I think the lessons around here is like, don't spend all of your money on like really expensive custom pieces. Like there might be 1 or 2 things that you should just do to get started. If I didn't buy those big bolts, I'd be sitting there like trying to do something myself and not knowing that it's going to work. So yeah, and have a methodology and a set of principles about what you're trying to do. Maybe don't get hung up on those specific features. So this tools, yeah, I mean, tools are great, and I mentioned it earlier. So in the DIY industry, this is going to send some of you to sleep, but maybe it'll perk some of you up. There are 2 really big brands. One of them is Milwaukee, that's the red one. The other one's Makita. Okay, and there is Bosch in there as well. I feel I have to say Bosch. We've got Bosch in the room, right? My brother's a Bosch fan. I was like, I don't know how I feel about saying this, but these 2 are considered like the top competitors at the moment. I already had a Makita drill about 5 years ago. I felt really great about getting that. And so part of me was like, well, I'm a Makita person, right? I need to get all Makita, because then you've got all the batteries, things like that. Robbie's jumping up in the background. I liked it because it was turquoise, to be honest, and it comes from Japan, and you know, Japanese people pretty much, you know, they're pretty precise and they know what they're doing. So yeah, but yeah, I realized, I spoke to my friend Matt, who you saw earlier. He was like, yeah, just get one brand and then you just get the same batteries and the same charge. I was like, I've got a basement. Why am I over-optimizing to just not have 2 chargers and 2 different battery packs. Why am I over-optimizing for that? I've got a basement. The battery chargers are this big. Why am I limiting my choices, right? So this then came to mind, where I work with a lot of customers who are looking at multi-cloud strategy. And 5 years ago, I would have said, don't go multi-cloud. You don't need it. Stick with one cloud, build your capability as a team, figure out some infrastructure as code, understand how it all works together. A lot of companies now, in fact, legislation is now changing around critical national infrastructure to say that you have to be thinking, at least, not necessarily have to be in 2 clouds, maybe they'll get there, but you have to be thinking about how might you offload from one cloud provider if they suddenly, trip a regulation wire or, suddenly like box you into a corner financially. So this idea of being flexible around and then making decisions about what is important. Well, important for me when looking at these tools is actually choice. And although they both pretty much release the same kind of tools, there are subtle differences. So, it wouldn't be a tech conference without showing the CNCF landscape. So this is the choice that you have to make. And so there's a lot there. It's not just cloud providers. Every step of the way with platform engineering, there's all of these different choices to make. And I think my message here is like, get started, think about the principles. Don't get sucked into, putting all of your bets on one particular product. Think about it. So kind of coming towards a bit of the end, don't rush. I did this through my sunroof. It was bad. The wind started to take it. I was definitely breaking some laws. It was the last day, and I ran out of some particular type of wood that I needed to get done to meet my 5-day schedule. I'm not proud of that. Don't do this. Don't be that person. Think about the expert help. Think about some of the other things that I've been talking about. So you guys want to see what it looks like today? All right. So remember, it's 5 days, just a platform. Here we go. So it's about 5 meters by 5 meters. Thanks. Yeah, cheers. It's across 4 trees. One of them's not load-bearing, the 5th one there. It's solid. I got this really nice shape out of it. This is the first time I'd done decking before. Honed some new skills, figured out some important tooling. But it's phase 1. So what's the next phase? Some of you might have noticed that there's this janky step ladder going up there, so I didn't really think about that. Again, it's not for kids, but I would also like some people to get up there and enjoy it. Right, but not maybe for phase 1. I was just like, I'll just put a step ladder up there, then people can get some benefits, and it's fine. Again, going back to that product thinking about who the customer is. Now, my dad's quite a heavy-set guy. He didn't enjoy that process, but he did it. But that was my next phase, right? So I started to think about steps. This was about 2 months afterwards. I was like, a friend of mine, who I'll show you in a minute, I was like, I'm going to build some steps, and I've got a 5th tree to play with. So I was like, really worried about busting this one tree that I had to do this on. So what did I do? I found a QA environment. It's this neighboring tree that I could run some tests on. And there's me, the QA, just having a little wiggle. Failed test, actually, as it turns out. I didn't think about some of the twisting on that. So I doubled the width of it, got a couple of extra screws in there, improved generation. Here's Toby. You might say that I wouldn't like to say he's a load test, but maybe he's a little bit more production-like, a little bit more like on the way towards my dad. So that was important. So that seemed like successful. So let's build some more of those. And I don't know whether the video is going to work. Oh, it is working. Yeah, there we go. Yeah, pretty cool. I quite like that. And then I cut open a hatch because I needed to get up there, right? I mean, pretty rudimental stuff. So I think, just kind of bringing it back to platform engineering, like people, process, tech, business value. Think about the product. Think about the metrics that might kind of indicate that you're on the right track. try to get to tools and technology sort of last. And business value, hopefully if you've got product thinking in there, business value is always going to be there. Wrapping up some of those notes, having expert support at the beginning definitely helps. If you need any of that, you know where I am. Details coming at the end. Think about the people that you've already got in your organization. Think about the methodologies and principles. And just to sort of wrap up on final thoughts. So I didn't learn how to apply circular saws to wood via Makita's online site or Milwaukee's online site, right? I went to the Treehouse Master. And so when you're thinking about these tools, going to AWS to figure out CI/CD is probably not the right thing to do. Go to some people, find out who's been doing this, who's been using these tools. Again, I can help you direct you to some of those people. There's a lot of those people in the room. Ultimately, and hopefully, you'll end up like I did, happy customers. That's my mum and dad. Gin and tonics and a beer. Happy engineers. Some sweet platform products. Okay, not mine yet, right? Or this one, I'm still kind of deciding where to go. But it's a journey, right? I mean, I think that's the point. So thanks for sharing that with me. And I will say, just before you come on, you know, I didn't do this alone. I've got a lot of people to thank of all varying skill sets. And so I just want to say a special thanks to those people as well.
Thank you, Max. Please, applause. Who's this guy? We know this guy. Did you do some testing also?
Yeah, he's the reason I'm here. Ivan's the reason I'm here, so thank you.
Yes, please do.
Max, did you get a chance to onboard some junior engineers, like nieces and nephews?
No, not yet. I mean, we talked about the Gene Kim kind of I need your help slide. I wanted to kind of crowbar it in here. But if anyone wants to come and help, I mean, anyone's got any insights, because I'm new to the tools, that's for sure. But yeah, I can always use more help.
You know, when you showed it, my first impression and reaction was, that's a one hell of a roof. So you can always go other way around.
Yeah, go underneath, dig down.
Max, thank you very much for coming here. I know the knee is hurting a bit, maybe. We'll take you, we'll carry you around. Thank you once again.
Thanks.
Thank you very much.